Welcome to the AI show Southwest, the podcast where we explore how organizations are using AI here in the Southwest of the UK. I'm Shane Solomon, co-host of this new podcast, and this is my co-host, Matt Greaves, the founder and CEO of Southwest AI Solutions. Now, we're going to be having some open discussions and learning from people that are adopting AI right now, some experts, and we've got one certainly on the show today, and we're super excited to welcome Dr. Ben Siu from the University of Plymouth Business School. Ben is a lecturer in marketing and portfolio lead, marketing and place at Plymouth Business School, and self-confessed AI nerd. So you are definitely in good company, Dr. Ben. So welcome to our podcast. We're delighted to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me. I was planning on having an AI nerd stick into my shirt. They're in production.
I tell you what, that's the merch we need to be looking at, man.
Yeah, we should look at that for sure.
We should.
I like the idea of that.
We should. So, of course, you guys know each other, and I was delighted to meet you this morning as you came into the studio because of your CV. It's pretty impressive. But Matt, I think it's only right, really, that you start delving into this show with Dr. Ben.
Thanks, Shane. Well, I'm really keen to get into some of the detail, but I guess before we dive right into the detail, I think we just back up and just tell us a little bit about your experience of AI. How did you get into AI initially?
So my initial interaction with ChatGPT is actually education-based. It's surrounding my son. I imagine quite a lot of kids that don't like the idea of doing reading, maths, science, any education. It's just boring. So what I wanted to do when ChatGPT first came out is find a way to get him to read more. And we made a first version of a custom GPT. So this is before we had custom GPTs and we only had the prompts to start with. And we create a customized story, starring his favorite Pokemon, Harry Potter characters. Suddenly the story came to life and he started reading. And it was this really small things that if this really minor thing can have such a big change in the way that my son views reading and education, there must be a way of scaling this up much larger. So really, that's how I got started, is I tried to leverage this technology, and pretty much like all parents do, to better the lives for themselves and their family. So since then, it's just been, how do I leverage this for my students? How do I better this for universities? But also for those people that follow me on LinkedIn, I'm looking at the societal impact. We look quite a lot on this is how the technology advances, but not so much on actually what does society think, how does it feel, how does it react to it?
Yeah. And the thing is, I like to get straight in my concerns of AI right at the start with guests. And that is that kind of long-term or even short-term, come to that, excitement for it. And also the fears too, and what your kind of visions are for it over the next, even just 2 years,
I think it's really difficult to predict how AI is going to change. It's not, the very nature of it is that if you give the same input, it can have an infinite number of different outputs. And even the people who are developing it don't really understand fully what happens inside, but people are constantly pushing the frontier, the edges of where AI can go. So I think there's lots of opportunities, but it requires kind of leaders and society to think about, it doesn't necessarily mesh with the way that we work now. And people can't see how work is changing, how education is going to change. Think of the difference between when we used to have no computers on desks to having computers on desks. If we look back now, that wasn't a bad change.
It wasn't that long ago, really, when you think about it.
And the same thing with an iPhone. Everyone has that in their pocket, and the way we communicate drastically changes. Now, you can say there's been the good parts of it. You can now call your relatives around the world. But at the same time, you have dangers associated with social media. So everything comes with benefits and drawbacks. I think the greatest danger of AI is actually people not knowing how to adopt it. AI literacy, AI fluency is going to be really important. And the pace of change doesn't match the pace of understanding and adoption. So this gap between how people use it and how the technology changes is just getting bigger and bigger. So I think that's the main issue.
Yeah, I'd agree with that completely because I think, we're seeing a rate of change of technology and certainly in the AI space moving so fast. And, for a lot of us, we are still at the very early sort of stages of learning how to adopt that in our businesses, in education, in home life. And I think there's a temptation that, to your point, Shane, it's like a new shiny toy. Let's jump in and start playing with it straight away.
Mm.
And there is that element of experimentation and trying it, but also, having not putting a pressure on ourselves in terms of having to learn it overnight. And actually, this is going to take time in the same way when the internet came on, social media, it took us time as businesses, as, in our personal lives to understand really how to adopt it. But I really love what you said about using AI to enhance your son's learning experience by uh, not quite gamifying it, but creating something that's relevant to him to help him with aid his learning. Um, you know, a lot of what I've heard about learning education is that if you can make it fun, enjoyable, relatable to the individual, and everyone relates in different ways. But if I'm someone who enjoys Harry Potter, if I can be learning through the world of Harry Potter, then it's going to be more enjoyable experience for me. And I guess that's kind of what you've been trying to achieve.
Well, that's exactly that. So what we're trying to find out is how do we actually personalize learning? And if you look at the new tools which have come out, they talk about personalization. Interestingly, before there was study mode, guided learning, I created a Gemini gem almost a year ago, which was to help my son with his homework. And again, it was not answer driven. It was kind of, you had to think about it. So, if a train left at this time, goes 20 miles an hour, how quickly does it get to this point? No amount of begging and crying to the gem would ever give the answer, but it would then put in these analogies. So maybe Hogwarts
Wow.
Express left
Yeah.
the station at here, it had to pick up Harry here, Hermione here, and things like that. But it makes the learning more engaging than just the words on the piece of paper.
Sure.
And that's kind of the personalized part of it. So it's not necessarily, you don't have to think all about this scaffolding and pedagogic changes. Sometimes it's just the framing of the question makes a dramatic difference in how they view the problem.
And I think there's a lot of fear in AI in terms of just giving the answers.
Yeah.
And to your
That's
point
what I was going to
there,
say.
I think we've seen it recently with ChatGPT releasing their study mode. I was kind of keen to sort of delve a bit deeper into that in terms of how that's different than just using ChatGPT out of the box.
So all of the versions of it, so Gemini's version, Claude's version, and ChatGPT's version, how they function is that they have a system prompt. So someone has already told the system, this is how you teach. So it's not different to the instructions I would have given my gems 12 months ago. So, it says, do not give the answers, think about asking in a Socratic way, ascertain the learner's level, what they're studying, and things like that. So these are all things that could have been done before, but to take out that one bit of complexity. So
Mhm.
working out the system prompt in order to learn, that's what all these companies have now done. So the great thing about them is that they can be personalized because they require you to give the information up front to be able to do that. And it is very good for learners who are motivated to learn. So if it's, teach me about quantum computing as if I were 15 and things like that, it's really, really good at that. What it's not so good at is if the learner is quickly needs an answer, doesn't want to go through what I call the pain and struggle of learning. So having taught at the university for over 10 years now, the learning is painful. You are meant to struggle. That is the point. Because that's really what kind of gets it stuck into your head.
Mm.
When you're just given the answer, you don't go through that process. So these study modes work really well when the learner is motivated, less so when they're not motivated. And I think study mode is going to be really good companion to teachers in the classroom, not as, at least not in its current form, not in an individual way for learning. Because I'm pretty sure both of you, if you think back to school, college, and university, you're going to think back, this teacher made a mark. I find it very unlikely that ChatGPT study mode is going to make that same impression and mark on you in the way that a human would when they were teaching something. Just something about them, the way they taught, the way they related it, or the way they connected with you is unique. And the LinkedIn post I kind of jokingly said, I think, you know, learning is inherently a human thing. So when we think back to a long time ago, how before we had computers and everything, we learned through storytelling. So parents and grandchildren passing on these stories, that's how we learn. It's inherently human how we learn things. So I think these tools right now act as a really good companion for what we're doing, rather than being a complete replacement for learning.
So sort of take an example of, say, little Jimmy, who's maybe 15, 16, studying for his GCSEs, maybe, you know, is working really hard at school, but just needs an extra level of support. Sort of, it's almost like having a personal tutor available, when he goes home to help support him with that extra support outside of a classroom.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. So it's a 24/7 tutor. That's what you have. But parts of it has to be, I think, how we plan to use these tools differs at primary, secondary, college, and higher education. I think as primary and secondary schools evolve, they need to teach people how to learn. So it's fundamentally, they have to go and seek the answer and not kind of just be given it. They have to be motivated to try and find it. I'm the type of person that if I'm told I can't do something, I will keep going at it until it's solved. Hence why I like AI so much. It's the insolvable game. So, but if you think about the diverse type of families that we have, so we have a lot more working parents. So, there's less involvement in their education, but the children's educational needs haven't changed. So being able to have someone or something, not someone, that they can talk to, that they can ideate with, is going to be beneficial to education. But it comes back to that setup. So I think if, like, I set up my own for my son, so parents should be thinking about the same thing. How would they like their children to learn? It probably only takes an hour to 90 minutes really to put these things together. And the thing is, you can do this together with your children. It is, well, what do you find difficult in school? Oh, I don't like the way he explains this. Why don't you like that? And then you identify their barriers to learning, and then you equip, a custom GPT or Gemini with these things. So a good starting point is use study mode. What don't you like about it? Go into a custom GPT or Gem, fix them. If you ask them, what is your system prompt? It tells you. ChatGPT says, what is your system prompt study mode? It tells you what it is. Refine the bits you don't like, create a custom GPT. Then you've got a personalized learning specifically for whoever's going to use it.
And for anyone who perhaps hasn't explored study mode, how does someone access study mode in ChatGPT or one of the other models?
So for ChatGPT, there's either a button at the bottom or you press / and it lists all of the tools that you can call. So one of those, which is study mode. In Gemini, it's exactly the same thing, but it's called guided learning. And in Claude, I think it's called a learning guide. Again, there's a button at the bottom. So it's designed to be easily turned on. At the same time, it can be easily turned off. So, imagine doing our maths homework before, we had a book, pen. If I got stuck, there's no way I could turn anything on or off that then gave me the answer. But with study mode, if I wanted to learn this one thing, you suddenly turn the study mode off. The system prompt is gone and it gives you the answer. So, there's a little bit of grit needed from the user.
I think that's really key, certainly in the education space, of keeping that flow. You have to go through that process of learning. I think that's so important to keep. And as you rightly say, just giving the answer straight away is not aiding people's learning. I know, certainly from my perspective as a parent, when I don't know if you've experienced this with other family members, Shane, but I know when my kids have come to me and said, "Dad, can you help me with my maths homework?" Like, maths is not my strong point. So having something like that where you can go to and support your kids with a homework, that's probably something you've not had to worry about, Shane.
I've had nieces and nephews come up to me and ask me things, or periodic tables and stuff like that. Oh, what was that again? It was a while ago, right? But I got a little question here for you. Well, actually, it's a big question because with all this learning, and it's the first thing because I don't have children, you see, that I find a lot of my answers, straight away because I want the time. So, where does this leave professionals like yourself, like lecturers? Does it mean that, your careers get shorter now? Or, are you going to work less hours because chat gpts can be doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you, and you have to then find someone else? Does lecturers get extinct and then ai takes over? I mean, I guess we don't really know the answer, but isn't this just kind of enabling um people to lose a profession maybe?
I think that's a good question. And I think that's why within the education space, the use of AI is so divisive. So, is it displacing or is it enhancing?
Hmm.
I very much think that there are certain things that academics do that they wish they could just give to somebody else. So the first goal is, how do we give those tasks to other people? Um, so one of the things that we produce every single year is a module handbook, and it contains the university policies. If you don't submit on time, extenuating, use this font. And the number one thing that we know is that that document rarely gets opened, but people will always ask us, when is the deadline and what is the policy? Um, so last year we had a custom GPT, which is just basically a chatbot version of the module handbook. But that got used a lot for the same questions we would normally get emailed from. So I didn't receive a single email which
Brilliant.
was, when is the deadline?
Mm.
If I wanted to apply for extenuating circuit, how do I do that? It's all in there. It's all covered. It actually allowed me to focus on the coaching and the mentoring parts of the teaching. So, the physical, actual getting them to learn. So if they didn't understand something, identifying what it is that they're struggling with and then putting it in a layman's term way that they get it. So actually it is not necessarily making us, um, well, it's not going to displace us.
Mhm.
It reconcentrates and pivot us onto actually focusing on getting students to learn, but while we teach them from our experience, but
Mm.
also our domain knowledge. The number one thing we kind of see with a lot of AI use at the moment is, here's my prompt. It works for my agency, but they don't disclose, I've been working in an agency for 20 years. I've got 20 years of experience. This is how I know that this prompt will work. It has this thing. So our job is actually to teach that domain expertise. So one of the modules that I'm going to be teaching in this semester is market research. So one of the things they're going to have to be able to write is a client brief. So that's what's given to a researcher, and then they write a proposal about how they're going to do it. So we've likened these two things to a good prompt. The better the research brief, the better the prompt, the better someone or something else is going to be able to use them. So we're going through and teaching the domain knowledge. So you have a clear articulation of the problem. Who do you want to find that information from? Is there a method that you would prefer that they use? Now, this line of thinking has that dual purpose. It writes a client brief. It's also the same thing you have to think about when you're writing a prompt as well. So we're teaching AI literacy skills while teaching a domain specific skill as well. And also what we're trying to do more now is, the 90-minute hope the student sits there and absorbs doesn't really work. So I think Matt and we did the same degree. I think we only graduated 1 year apart. So what we did back then was just sit, listen, hope we don't get picked on if there's a question.
That's right. That's right.
But what we're trying to do now is actually, we know that the content can be generated quite quickly. It's our job as lecturers to make that make sense, and it's to make it come alive.
And I think I'll just add, and you touched on it earlier on, I think it's the way you can make your students feel as well. I think we all remember those teachers at school, primary school, going through school life, college, university, where you're left with an impression of how they teach. And that comes back to the personality of a human being. And this touch point, how we wanted to make this show in person as opposed to doing it over Zoom, because there's something about seeing the whites of people's eyes and being in that energy space together, how people communicate. And I think that, I would like to think, is a huge thing really for um, you know, enhancing the AI tools that you have as a tool, you know?
Yeah, and I think to kind of following on from it, I think those, as you say, teachers what we can remember from back in our school, college, university days, but really left an impression and really inspired us. That was when we were having real, one-to-one interaction with them, or they were able to give us their time, and with more and more um, one more work being involved in terms of some of the admin bits and pieces. If AI can be used from a staff's perspective in terms of helping to relieve the burden of some of that admin and allow us teachers to do what they absolutely do best, is inspiring young
Yeah.
people and being that kind of role model, and that helping progress their education. I think that's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's also, we've been trying to, one of the key messages when I've given any type of AI training is, AI will do your work. It's, if it takes up your time, you know, what are you going to do with that time?
That's right.
Everyone's instant thing is, I have to find more work. Think about for how many years there's been an improper work-life balance.
Correct.
Why are people not actually rephrasing this as, I've gained 2 hours this week? Why would I fill all of that time with more work? So some things that I leave with my students is that I don't want them to enter the workplace and then be stressed 37 and a half hours a week, but actually work 40, 50. If they are saving 1 or 2 hours a week, go meet your friends at the pub, go do something that's inherently more human. And, these people going into the workforce now have a genuine chance of having a good work-life balance. It's something I think we all wish we had when we first started working, but it's a genuine opportunity that they have now. So, I mean, that's one of the key things. It's one of the very last things that I say for any type of AI training that I do is AI is an opportunity to find more work. It's an opportunity to balance. But it's the same thing with education. If you're not struggling for hours on end to understand something, so what would normally taking you, 3 hours to research online, go and get the books, go out and play football in the park, because what you do outside of the classroom and reading is equally as good for your learning as what you do when you're actively engaged in the subject matter.
That's right.
So think about using that time more productively.
Or even sleep.
Or sleep.
Because sleep's great for, making sure you're sharper and things. And, and it's a thing that people don't get much of these days. People's minds are active. They've got so much going on. Life is pretty crazy. So AI steps in there and enables, I use the word enhance a lot for AI when it's used for good and things. It's meant to enhance your life. So you're absolutely bang on for what I'm thinking, really.
Yeah, I love that idea of using the time to then sustain those personal relationships in person.
Mm.
With technology and AI in particular, making it more and more easy to kind of be behind a computer all day, every day. Actually taking time out to meet with people, to socialize, to whether it's playing football down the park or whether it's meeting up with your friends, going out.
Mm.
Just that personal interaction, I think, is we need that more than ever now.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I was just listening to, on the way here, I was listening to the Hamilton soundtrack, and there's a part where they're kind of talking about starting a new young, um, a new era. But the most important part of that is setting the right foundation. And I think while we're early on in this kind of AI journey, setting that right foundation kind of through education is going to be important.
How do you find your colleagues at university adopting AI? What's the feeling? Is it 50-50, for and against? They're adopting it. I know they're in education, so
Yeah.
they probably feel they have to, but what's the kind of gut feeling of the people that work around you?
It's quite a jarring topic for some people. I think people sit into three camps. I love it. I hate it. I hope it goes away. And I obviously sit in one of those. But at the same time, it's really important to kind of understand why people go against it. So
Let's talk about that for a minute. Let's do that then.
So if we look at some of the kind of things like English, where now a lot of content can be produced by AI, so that it there's an argument that when you use AI to use this, you take the human out of it. They're not learning properly, and I fully understand that side as an argument. But at the same time, there are challenges to learning are pretty much universal. If they don't understand something, you need a way of helping them do it. And as humans, we only have a certain amount of time that we can dedicate to each individual student. So the people who aren't really using it always kind of state there's privacy concerns. Absolutely, there are privacy concerns. And, our business school has an AI policy about how AI can be used and policy and things like that. So that's important for any education
Did
provider.
AI write that?
Uh, it's 50 pages, so it wrote some of it, yes. But actually, the interesting thing about the policy is, yes, AI did help write it, but then it takes, a team of us to actually get people to understand it and adhere to it and want to kind of use it as well. So again, the byproduct of it is still human. Bias sits as another reason why people don't use it. It's trained on this type of data. Absolutely agree. There is bias in the system, and then there's hallucination that makes stuff up. So as much as the benchmarks say it's now 0.1 or 1% of conversations containing errors, there's probably a bit more. So it's, like when you test the mileage on a car, it's in optimal conditions. So it does the range that it says. I think there's always going to be people that are going to be resistant to it. It's change. Any change, there's going to be resistant to it. So I think it's really a matter of kind of forming the bridge between the people that love it and the people that hate it. I don't know what that bridge is. I found it's the easiest way is find the thing they hate, they still hate doing, and they don't really mind that if AI does it. And you show them how to kind of solve that one use case, that one problem. But then they go, that's what you're going for. So these conversations, when you go to your product, you see their brain, they either say it or they go, that's what you're going for. And some of the staff members who I've spoken to, I didn't know I could do that. Oh, I didn't know you could correct for that by just doing this. And then they start using it.
It's all about solving problems at the end of the day. And I think, people always will pay for convenience and for solving problems and taking pain away. And if you're going through that pain of any laborious task or whatever it may be, if you can have that heavy lifting taken away to free you up with the free time or whatever else, if people do choose to take on more work, whatever they want to do, it's got to be a good thing. But eventually that penny will drop. And I remember seeing ChatGPT for the very first time demonstrated here at the studio, and a developer chap came in it. And this was probably, I want to say 3 years ago. And he showed me and it blew my mind and the penny dropped. Then I was like, wow. And I've got that excitement as an enthusiast on this show, working with Matt as a co-host. I've just got that excitement of what can be become, because I'm very cup half, full kind of guy. And I'm so excited about it and and listening to you today and the pluses that you're getting out of it and for your son's education it's phenomenal. But of course, it does have the bad side that's happening right now. And I just want to know what your thoughts are on that and how, you know, the universe at large, moves forward with that. And what I'm talking about is that whole kind of thing on social media, the fake news, the fake photographs that probably I consume a lot of social media that I'll be flicking through, and it's just wasted maybe 2 or 3 minutes of my time because I thought this photograph I'm looking at is real. How do the governments, how do the social media companies tackle this? Because it's a problem, right?
Well, it definitely is. So especially as, the way we use social media means that, our feeds become a lot more customized. So everyone has their own kind of vacuum of information. So I think it still comes down to education. You do hear these companies saying, so you've got Google, who is now kind of marking these things as AI. So when you produce anything in VO, it says AI in the corner now. At the university, we say ideated by, created by. So ideated by myself, created in VO, or whatever it may be. I think there's a requirement for that. It's like transparency, like we have product placement markers.
That's right. Yeah.
So we need that greater level of transparency. And if you see some tags on some social media posts, it now says AI created and things like that.
I've seen them. Yeah.
I think it's going to be really difficult for any one person to look at these two pictures now and say, I'm not sure, but that's the point of AI. We go back to the traditional Turing test, computer made, man made. Can you tell a difference? And at the moment, that type of content has passed the Turing test. People can't tell the difference between the two of them. So actually what it requires people to do is be more critical. Does it make sense that this person is here?
Correct.
And then to go out and do the further bits of research. So right now, if you look on a Facebook post, there's all those meta questions you can ask underneath it.
That's right. Yeah.
So you could argue, if Meta wants to put its content out there, it might be trained to show you something, but it's then up to that person to then go to different sources and find them. So go use Google, go use the new AI mode, go use Perplexity. It just requires us to not just be so zombified in absorbing this information in.
Just question things, really.
Yeah. So I think it's just going to be difficult.
I think that's
the right answer.
Yeah,
It is.
and I think that's where education, no pun intended, but education is so important in terms of how we use AI, how we consume AI content moving forward. I think we're all on this kind of journey, and I think we're all kind of feeling our way with it.
One of the interesting things about our policy is we specifically focus on AI companionship. So we know there's a larger number of people who are using chatbots as friends, confidants, and things like that. So in our policy, we've actually encouraged staff to try to observe, has there been an unhealthy relationship developing? So, when you saw they took away the 4.0, the backlash was because so many people had developed this relationship with them. But in people's minds, it's this fake and real again. It feels like a real friend in the way that it talks. And again, that's another difficult bit. How do you, once they've started engaging with it, how do you get them to separate that this isn't a real person from reality? Because those two things have fully merged at that point. So we're trying to think as academics, we have a duty not only to the academic performance, but kind of the pastoral care. So this is one of those things that we are kind of looking at as well. If we start seeing these things, we might consider going signpost them to counselling or things like that.
I think that's a really interesting topic, and I think we could delve really deep into that. That's almost a separate show in itself. I think certainly for me, as a parent, I'm I want my kids to be aware of AI. They're going to be growing up into an AI world. They're going to need to know how to use AI in the work we're doing. But at the same time, what you said there, I'm also really scared about them using AI as a confidant, or treating it as a friend. And there's been stories in the news about where that really goes horribly wrong, and I think that's where education is so important in terms of AI as a tool. It's not a replacement for human interaction.
So one of the easiest way for inadvertent learning is modeling. So my students know how enthusiastic. They know that I'm an AI nerd. So they will see how I use it. And yes, sometimes I'll ask for questions, but these are when I use, ChatGPT search function as if I were using Google. I want the answer. But actually, when I'm building things, so building workflows, I'm looking into Notion now. The answer or the solution isn't the most important thing to me. I said, help me build this. I haven't say build this, help me build this.
Correct.
And if I do those type of things in the classroom and they see that's how I prompt, you inadvertently model your behavior into what they're doing. So it's a good way of teaching by just showing them I'm not using it as an answer solution. I'm using it to help me. So when it comes to creating different research proposals, for example, I might say, I'm really stuck between working out which method is the most appropriate. I think it's this. Critique that for me. And then I look at both and say, but what you suggested doesn't quite fit what the client says because the client said this. At no point, it just is giving me an answer, but no, I've been critical of it. I've used it as a thought partner. At no point did I say, just tell me which is the best one.
Sure. Yeah. Question. That's what it's all about. Listen, I'm going to wrap this podcast up, guys. It's already run over the second episode. I've run over. I can't believe it, but I knew this was going to happen. But Dr. Ben, what is there anything that you'd like to add to this podcast that I've not prompted you for, or Matt, so far? And if there isn't anything in particular right now, is there any kind of parting tips or advice to our viewers, listeners, of how they can use AI today moving forward?
Well, to be consistent, as I said, what I normally say at the end of all of these type of things is, as AI makes space and time away from doing tasks or creates those things, it's not all about work. Do more of the human things that it now allows you to do. Strive for a good work-life balance.
Yeah, it's good advice. Matt, is there anything you'd like to add to this episode before I wrap things up?
No, other than to say I completely agree. And I think using AI as an enabler, and, it's very easy to then fill that time you've saved with more work. But I think, having the discipline to sort of choose how you want to spend that time, I think that's really good advice.
And Dr. Ben, just to finish up, what's the best way for people to contact you? What's your favorite method? Social media, email, phone, pigeon,
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Okay.
I have one of the shortest names, so BENSIU. All of my thoughts are on there and things like that. Always happy to talk to people and connect to people on there.
Well, there you go. Make sure you follow this man, mindful of information, much more than AI, I'm sure. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, if you're listening to us, watching us, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, share it, like it, love it, pass it on to anyone you know who is embracing in AI right now. We've got so many great guests coming up over the next few months that I can hardly contain myself, really. But that's great quality of guests coming in. So thank you very much for myself. And I'm sure you would like to say goodbye and sign off.
Thanks very much, Shane. Yeah, thanks, Ben, for coming and joining us today. Really enjoyed talking with you, and look forward to progressing this even further.
Yeah, well, thank you both for having me, and I hopefully will see you on more of these.
Absolutely, I think you'll be a resident whether you like it or not. As always, I'd like to say a massive thank you to our producer Jay Kennett as well for producing the show for us today, and we will see you in the next episode.